excellent.
Rescued.
We made it. I didn't have any more jokes. So.
That's good.
Yeah.
All right, we'll get more serious. It's not serious. Like, we are serious as a company, but we also like to have fun. So we have unicorns. There's going to be a lot that we're going to talk about. So let's drill into the, I think, agenda. Oh no, this is the most important part. The lawyer cats are very serious, and everything we talk about here is really our opinions and not an official. Do not tweet this and say like, hey, Google Cloud said you can start shutting down stuff in production. Like, that's not what Google says. These are our opinions. We do have a book. There will be some copies. If people want copies, you can download it from the website. That is official. Like, these are real. Like, they've been approved. But everything else is us. Please do not tell my boss. He'll be sad. I'll be sad. I'm not going to read it. You can skim it. If you like that kind of agenda, this is a cool talk and you'll enjoy it. If not, there's like coffee, like
bagels.
SRE isn't for everyone. Like, some people are like, this is fantastic and I would love to talk about this. And other people are like, wow, this looks like the dullest thing I've ever seen. So if this isn't the thing for you, like, now's your chance. Or, like, we'll just look away for like a second. If you're still here, you're good. You're in the right place.
All right, there's still, most of them are still
I think
here.
most of them are still here.
Yeah.
This is fantastic. The reason that we work on this together is because we both come to the same place from different backgrounds. I have spent like 20 odd years working in like proper enterprises, like banks, and doing all sorts of like enterprisey stuff. I'm still okay, but like, it's been an experience. And so, you know, often we have conversations with people like, well, you know, this looks easy at Google. Like, SRE is like, it's fancy. You have free food. Like, you'll be fine. But how do I do that in my company, in my enterprise, in like a big place, in manufacturing or banking? I can tell you can. Like, you definitely can. But also, sometimes people are like, well, tell me how the cool Google stuff works as well.
So I grew up on the spaceship, basically. So I've worked at Google for over a decade as an SRE and a few other years doing other things also. So like far too many years inside of the Google spaceship. So I kind of come at the problem from like the very Google specific way of doing things. And then I have to like check with James, like, do these words make sense? And he goes, no one will understand what you're talking about. And so then we meet in the middle. And so that's where this book came from. So you can read my background there. I actually did leave Google for a little while, and I joined I would describe it as a medium-sized enterprise. And man, that was a learning experience, I'll tell you what. So how to build a platform, how to migrate off of an on-prem, you know, .NET ancient, not .NET Core, the old one, onto, you know, modern stuff. It was a blast, I'll tell you that. But now I'm back here, and I do things like this now instead. So this is the merge of our two brains resulted in this talk in this book. So
hopefully we've got everything covered.
I think we got it. Yeah.
Right.
End of talk, or no?
I'm going to give like, okay. And again, like, it's still the second chance to bail out. Everything's kind of in this slide. We've seen, and some of you are like, will understand when I talk about like things like a Gartner hype cycle or a market clock, when like everyone's very enthusiastic about SRE, like super enthusiastic. It's like the hottest thing. This is amazing. And we talk to customers a lot and we help them, and often they're like, it's not going as well as I thought. There's a gap between our adoption and our enthusiasm in this space, which is sad.
I think people can probably, you know, have felt that way, right? Or like, you've seen this occur, hopefully, in your world. I imagine that this is familiar to a lot of people in this room. The SRE books came out, and they were this kind of crazy tome, and everyone read them, and then they kind of went, so how does that help me, right? Like, how do I actually apply this to my daily life? I like to joke that the books are like, you know, some sort of religious text, and, you know, you read them and it's great, sure, but like, there's no priests to help me like actually apply this to my real life. So the interpretation sometimes of these giant tomes is difficult, especially when it runs up against like your company's culture, for example, or existing ways of doing things, or you know, the technology that you're kind of stuck with today. So we're hoping that this will help you guys push through that.
So yeah, not everyone wants it like exactly the Google way, but like people do want some SRE. Like there's something here. We think it helps people. We think it's important that stuff on the internet is reliable. It's not everything. Sometimes it can be expensive. Sometimes it can be difficult. But it will be better than today. Like we're making continuous improvements. Like that's better than delayed perfection. So we used to hand out these books, and like a lot of people took those books, and then we're like, have you been reading them? And a lot of people were like, yeah. But I don't think they were. I feel like, and like there's another one, there's a workbook, there's all sorts of big, and like, so we made some smaller books, made like consumable, and this was hard.
You can read that on the plane easy.
You can read it on the plane.
Yeah.
And this was actually surprisingly hard because you can't actually waffle about stuff. You have to actually write it down and be like, no, this is clear. And the tech editing team are our saviors in this for doing that. Because we're like, let's try and distill all the important stuff so you don't have to read the books until you're ready, until you want to dive into those areas. So please take the opportunity to, like, and again, you can download it from the website. If there's more stuff in this area that you like, it's in here. This is why we did it. Section by section.
Let's do it.
Getting started. You don't have to use cloud, but I work for Google Cloud, so I'm going to tell you to use cloud. Also, if you want to do SRE without cloud, we've not seen that go well. Like, I'm not going to say which cloud you should use, that's up to you. But if you're not using cloud or you're not building a private cloud, it's going to be tough, like super tough. If you're in a startup and you've got your cool like microservices, like it's easier. The darker your enterprise, the harder it is. The more legacy software you have, the more challenging it will be. So just be careful, like the cloud journey is not the SRE journey, your SREs can help, but like if you're not doing cloud, if you cannot spin up new servers easily, your SREs will get very frustrated very quickly and they'll either build a cloud or they'll leave. Hopefully they'll build a cloud, but that might be weird.
Yeah, it's important not to conflate the effort of moving to cloud with SRE. These are distinct things, they're related to each other, but they're separate from each other. So if you hire a bunch of SREs and say, please now move us to the cloud, they'll say like, that, what? No, hang on, that was a different job, right?
It's probably the DevOps team.
Listen, James, we talked about this. Speaking of DevOps.
So you may not have all these things. You may look at some of these things and be like, oh, my eyes. Like, they exist, right? Like you may not like them, you have strong opinions about them, but like you probably have framework. Like however old your company is, like there'll be some frameworks. Even if your company isn't old, there'll still be people who've joined your company who are old. Like we're there. And we have backgrounds in things. So we bring all of that knowledge with us, and that's what makes your culture and that's what makes your technology, is all of those things. For a long time, people are like, well, we'll just get rid of that and we'll put in some SRE. Don't do that. Like, it doesn't seem to work very well. Like, convert your things. Like, use the things that they have. Like, often people are like, I want to get rid of ITIL and put SRE in. What about procurement? There isn't really any, SREs don't like doing procurement.
No.
Procurement people like doing procurement. Don't make your SREs do procurement. No. Like,
these are not overlapping circles, is the point of the diagram here, right?
So can you leverage and adapt these? Yes, please do that. Please do not try and just rip them out and then make the SREs do it. I mean, we're going to recommend one of them. You should do DevOps. I feel like this is a good, like, sometimes the audience is tougher on us for this one, but I feel like everyone here is like, yeah, like we should do DevOps. That's probably a good idea. That's the closest thing for us. Like, if you're going to do a framework, do DevOps. We have some Dora. We bought Dora. Like, it's awesome. Jez is amazing. Like that's the thing. Like, I don't think people here are going to argue with me about that. If so, I'd like to hear that argument. So do the DevOps. That will help you a lot with the SRE rather than those other things. But that's more like a guide. It's not a mandate.
While you're at it, when you're doing the DevOps, there is actually some reliability in the DevOps already, right? So maybe you're already doing some reliability-based things as a part of your DevOps practice. We actually found in the last survey, maybe it was the last 2 surveys, that reliability and DevOps are, peanut butter and jelly or peanut butter and chocolate or whatever it is that you want to put together.
Good combo is.
The good one. I actually am allergic to peanuts, so I don't know what the answer is.
Combination.
So for me, no. But the two definitely work well together. It's not again one or the other. Like one of the questions I get a lot, which really frustrates me, is what's the difference between DevOps and SRE, or like should we do DevOps or SRE? And I just like it hurts my head to even like I don't know where to start answering that question. They're distinct things. They both are important. Please don't try to choose between the two of them. Don't pick one over the other. So from the Google spaceship land, I never knew the word DevOps like years and years ago. I hadn't heard of it. I started to hear it like out in the world, and I didn't really understand what it was. And it wasn't until I left Google and joined another company where I sort of like learned more concretely like what DevOps is, and I realized, oh, we were just doing that anyway. Like Google was doing DevOps, we just didn't call it that. And so people ask like, can you do SRE and DevOps at the same time? And Google's answer used to be like, well, I don't know. Like it depends on what you mean by DevOps. And I think we've kind of like
we do know.
We kind of know now, right? Like
we did a survey and everything.
Yeah.
Like
it turns out that you do have to have DevOps in place already, and then you sort of like add SRE to it, right? And there's a bit of overlap, sure, but you're going to have a hard time if you try to like just do SRE and skip the DevOps part. So please don't try that. that doesn't work. We've seen people try. Speaking of seeing things that people try, when you have things like cabs and knocks from those other circles that we showed a minute ago, those aren't part of the SRE model, and it's not because they're bad, right? You shouldn't feel bad if you have these. The reason why it doesn't work in the SRE model is because they're just not really distributed enough. They're a bit too centralized and they're a bit top down. If you have these 3-letter acronyms today and you're trying to adopt a new 3-letter acronym SRE, don't just shut down these things, right? Like don't just like cut them off at the head. You have to kind of build things up. So one of the tenets of both SRE and I think DevOps, but especially SRE is gradual change. And make sure you apply gradual change to to SRE itself as well. Don't just knife switch anything really.
It's very tempting.
Yeah, it feels like a good idea, and then it's bad. Right?
If you don't like your change board, the temptation is so strong. Like we'll just get rid of the change board. You didn't get rid of the change board. You just put all those changes somewhere where you're now not looking at them. That's worse.
Right.
Like it was bad with the change board, but once you got rid of it, it was just another change board, but like in a Slack channel you don't know about.
Shadow cab.
Bad cabs.
Yeah.
Like don't do that. So turn the cab or the knock, like turn it into something that works for you, evolve it. But like if you get rid of it, you didn't really get rid of it. Like it made it worse. So you don't have to fight those things head on.
Right.
We should talk about culture.
Yeah, culture's good, I heard.
We didn't tell people in the OG books about anything about culture. And I think that's probably the biggest mistake. Learning in this space. We think that SRE is emergent from culture. And we also think the same with DevOps. And if you look at some of the DORA research, it's the same piece, where if you have a culture that does these things, the generative, the Western model, you'll probably end up with something that looks like SRE or DevOps. If you don't have that culture, it won't go well. And that doesn't mean that you should worry too much about that, but you should be super cognizant that like how far you are on this chart will dramatically impact your SRE stuff. It turns out it wasn't just the SLOs, like I wish it was. Like we put some SLOs in, but we're still pathological. No, that didn't go well.
Maybe focus on the other thing.
You got to kind of look at some of those things. And we'll go into more detail, talk more about it.
Yeah. Okay, so these are some attempts that we've seen out in the world. Communities of practice, do it, for sure. It works, totally.
We're literally here.
Yeah, this is a community.
You work.
You are a member of this community right now. Feel it.
Grassroots is great.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk later about like it's not the only thing.
Right.
But if you're not going to grassroots, if you decided to tell all of your teams that are now SREs, this won't go as cool as you think. I'm so sorry as well. Some of these things also we should be clearer. So if you're in a training center, you're like, why are you being mean to me? Like that's not what it means. We mean that learning on the job is more important than like necessary classroom learning. You don't stop doing classroom learning, but like the learning on the job bit is the most important part. So 80-20 that. We didn't explain centers of excellence either. Center of enablement.
Yes. These roles tend to not work as we've seen them so far. Often what we find in centers of excellence or centers of enablement is that they tend to be a bit, what's the term, ivory tower-ish. And if you have a bunch of people who are sort of telling you what to do and they're not the ones really doing the work, it's kind of hard to take them seriously. And it just tends to not work, tends to be a bit wrong. So this is observations from working with lots of enterprises. We see people try this, we see them fail at it. The concept seems good, just doesn't seem to work. And then finally, again, don't knife switch anything, right? Don't do a big bang, right? Don't just say, you are now all, we've changed all of your titles, you're all SREs now. Don't stop whatever you were doing and do the SRE thing now.
Don't go chasing waterfalls.
Also that. Okay, so why SRE? Why take this approach? This may ring a bell. Like, we keep adding words and letters, and we apologize as an industry. I'm sorry.
It's not just DevOps anymore. DevMLOps.
Sure. Let's keep going.
So SRE evolved for similar reasons to DevOps, right? Like it didn't happen because we suddenly discovered it. The world evolved. Like, things got harder. Like, operations got more challenging. Developers needed to ship faster. So the reason why these things are pushing the evolution of DevOps was also the same reason that the evolution of SRE occurred. And so it's of a time. There was a time when you didn't need it. There was a time, I remember, when, I'm that old, that Twitter was down and they were just okay about it. They're like, we'll just put the whale up. It's cool. And now, if Twitter's down, it's like a meltdown and it's stock price, and yeah, there's a lot.
Big deal.
But there was a time not that long ago that the whale just was it. It was fine. So things have moved on, and that's what's pushed the evolution and why you see it more.
Yeah, and if you kind of follow that path, like the path through the pandemic, for example, a lot of internet services became basically really important. And when they were down for a significant amount of time, it was bad, not just for that company's bottom line and reputation, but for the people who depended on those services. If you follow that path into the future, the expectation is that more things are going to be more online and they're going to be more important to stay more up. So reliability is simply becoming more important to society. I think it was Niall Murphy who said a little while ago, SREs are the people who operate the machines that run society. That's not exactly perfectly true about all of society, but it kind of poetically, I like it. Yeah. So here's a question for the audience. Can you build a 4 nines service on 3.9 infrastructure?
It's a trick question.
It's a trick question. Right? The answer is yes. I ask this question to almost every customer that I talk to, and I think the answers that I get are about 50-50, yes and no. So there are definitely people in the world that are answering no, a hard no to this question. And I think that is an important distinction to make, to kind of change people's perspective on how to attack reliability in a digital system, especially in a distributed system. Think about RAID. If you're not convinced, think about RAID, right? And so what we did in RAID is we made it so that you didn't have to care about your disks failing anymore, right? You could use disks, they could fail all the time. The storage is still there, right? And how did we do it? We pay more for more disks, and we add some complexity in the form of software. We don't really notice the complexity anymore because RAID's done, it's pretty much figured out at this point, but it is there. It's underlying the system there. So we made this reliability or resilience trade-off to allow ourselves to deal with this risk. We were able to have let's call it a 4 nines disk system on top of a 3 nines disk, approximately. So this can be abstracted. These we call the pyramids. So these are the pyramids of reliability. On our left, I think, we have kind of the traditional model of component reliability. So this is the idea of, let's get a really big room, make it really cold, put some pipes into it for internet and water and stuff. put a bunch of heavy computers in there, put some software on them, like lock the door,
Real
walk away.
computers.
Never.
Proper
Yeah,
mainframe.
big burly ones, right? Let's not, let's make sure that these computers never turn off and they never fail. The idea here is that you're essentially building a very solid base, and everything you built on top of it, all your services, inherit their reliability from that solid base. As long as the machines never crash, there's nothing to add. It's up, right? It's great. So we call this the union model. We say all the things have to be running all the time, and then life is perfect. The problem with this is it's hard to scale up a locked building, right? It's hard to add machines to it. It's hard to add software to it without screwing it up, right? It's not very flexible. And it turns out if you want like warehouse scale, like giant internet, global spanning, like you need to be able to change things. You need to be able to make it bigger. There's the term scale up versus scale out, right? So when we go to the right side here, think about the pyramid as the other way around. Not only is it upside down, there's many of them, but like the point here is that, like we said a minute ago about having a 4.9 service on top of a 3.9 service, you're able to improve the reliability as you go up the stack, right? So every layer from your infrastructure up actually gets more and more and more reliable. Think about load balancers and multiple sites, for example. If you have a load balancer in front of two things, one of them can fail, nobody notices. It's great, right? That's the basic premise here. This is now an intersectional model. So one of the set needs to be up. This is much, much better. We can actually have lower availability of each component and still have a higher intersectional aggregate availability. This allows us to scale out. This is why Google invented SRE, right? It was because in order to make Google as big as it got, over the last 20 years, there was no way we could operate it on the left side. We had to build it out on the right side.
The crucial bit here as well is we're not saying you can't do the thing on the left. You can't have there's still a ton of mainframes. That's okay, right? Like that's not the problem, but you should not mix them. Like if you start applying each of these principles to the wrong area, that's when it gets weird, like when you cross the streams. So if you have your on-premise mainframe and it's going well and you don't need to change stuff, like don't focus on that bit. Like if you have an internet service that suddenly might need a lot of extra users, like this is the model. Like pick the one that suits you for what you're doing in this space. And I cannot, I think, explain any harder. Like as much as this might make sense to you, listening to us and explaining it, so many developers, so many people who are not involved in operations, none of this will make sense. There'll just be a whole raft of like SLO math and nines, and I don't know what the DevOps are saying, and people do not understand this in general.
Remember this slide, right? Like you all answered affirmatively to this question pretty much. Half the people I talk to answer no.
I'm a developer. My stack is weak. I need a strong server for it to sit on.
Right.
Like, it will end badly.
Beware.
Beware.
Okay.
So there's a bit here also, and this is super weird because people are like, well, you guys really want people to do more SRE, right? And we're like, actually, you can probably do less SRE. Like a lot of services in Google don't have SREs, and that's okay. You should build it and run it. Like that, you should DevOps it. Like that's the right thing to do. When you need SREs as like actually a relatively small subsection of things. Is reliability the most important thing for your product? Is that a differentiator? If that stops happening, is your CEO or VC telling you like stop, everything's wrong? Do you need to mitigate risks? Is it falling over every day and so you have to absolutely have this service available? Like is there a pressing need for it?
Or even is there an external entity saying you need to mitigate risk?
Like
yeah,
right.
Like
if this is not up, we're shutting you down.
If you have no list of risks that you're aware of, you probably don't need to SRE yet, right? Like as soon as you have risks in your head, you're like, oh, geez, I hope this doesn't happen. Now you're starting to head in the, I should think about reliability in a more structured way kind of direction.
And if you've got like millions of users, you're gonna need more of this. Like the more, it's not just your developers or your systems or your operations people, but if you just have a ton of users, you're gonna end up like hyperscale stuff, you're gonna end up in this space. And I think we all hope that we end up in that space. We all want millions of users, like that's the aim. So it's these things that are kind of your reason for doing it, not just because Google told you so.
Right, and at the end, even if you hit all of these marks, if you have many services, like maybe they're smaller shaped services, microservices, Not all of them need to be SRE'd, right? Maybe only some of them, the critical ones. Because if you're doing microservices, they're not all critical, right?
Hopefully.
Crickets, right? Maybe?
It's not just a bunch of dependencies that we don't know about.
Shoot.
So,
So this is a model from McKinsey.
McKinsey.
Yeah. And the idea here is, as an organization, you're probably working on more than one thing at a time, right? You're often running the current business, you're building out the next business, and you're doing a bit of research on like the future. Make sure you put your SRE effort towards the things that are making you money right now first. Those should be reliable. The thing that's going to replace today's thing. Also, probably you should be thinking about its reliability. The way distant stuff, do not prematurely optimize that, right? Don't worry about how you're going to scale up, the mega future, because we're not there yet, right? Most of those things out there in the mega future aren't going to exist. They're going to fail. They're experiments on purpose, right? So you shouldn't beef up an experiment too soon.
And the Horizon 1 pieces as well, SRE will be an accelerator. It will enable you to make change quicker in these areas where you're also got a lot of risk and you're nervous. It will slow down your emerging products. So it's not going to help you. Like, they're like, well, SRE makes it faster. Only in some areas. Areas where you're just shipping stuff and trying stuff out, you don't need it. Don't worry about it. Similar problem with DevOps. A lot of people are like, I want to build a pipeline. It's great, but did we just spend like a month building a pipeline and now there's pipelines everywhere and I'm not really sure why we're doing this again? The newer the product, the less you're going to need all of the extra stuff. So just target where you're going.
Yeah, think of it as an enablement for scale, right? If you have your MVP and it's working and it is the product and we are going for it, sure. Hockey stick is happening, let's do it. All right. However, this is probably not the first thing you would think of when you think about SRE, that it's a cost-reducing function, because we talked about SREs are expensive, right? And they don't necessarily contribute direct value. Turns out they actually are a longer-term cost reduction value, I guess. We put it as a strategic investment, not operational efficiency. One thing that we've seen, which is really unfortunate, is when IT or IT ops is treated as a cost center, right? What is the goal of a cost center? Become smaller, please, right? Like, cost centers must be reduced in time. With SRE, that's a bad plan, right? You don't want to take your SRE team and say hopefully by the end of next year you will be half as big. That's not really the goal. It's kind of the wrong incentive. We expect that there is growth in the system. And like we said just a second ago, the SREs are there to help you grow a system, right? They're there for the hockey stick. If you're trying to minimize the cost of an SRE team, that tends to be a bad sign.
And what we mean here in terms of global and local optimization is crucial to thinking about how we operate. The benefits of SRE accrue globally. Things like reputational damage are very hard to put into a cost center. What does it mean? My service is down as reputational damage. Well, I mean, how is that related? It is. It's tightly correlated. So there's global benefits, but often there's local costs. You have to work that out. Don't just wish it away. Make sure that those costs are being assigned into the correct teams. Otherwise, you'll start that local optimization. We've seen way too much of that, where people are like, we can just cut a couple of SRE heads, and I guess it's down sometimes now. Well, how much is it when it's down? Oh, millions of dollars. Get another SRE. Why are you doing this? Well, that's just the way it works here. It isn't. You can change that, but you have to go in and target it very precisely. We're looking for global cost reduction and not local cost reduction. One of the main reasons for doing SRE at Google is cost. That's fine. It's not a problem, but it's not local.
All right, some principles, finally. Does this ring a bell to anyone?
Has anyone been here?
Yeah.
Has anyone been, show of hands, has anyone been renamed DevOps or SRE? They're like, oh, that's my new job. So you can do it, but it's not going to help. I think everyone says this.
Yeah, this is just kind of general
Start
advice.
small.
Yeah, this is a good life lesson.
If you have an 18-month waterfall plan to do SRE, rip it up, don't do that. Start small. When we say organization destroying mistakes, it's because normally there's an ambitious person or consultant or someone who's well-meaning is like, I'm passionate about this, I want to do it. And they're like, I'm going to appropriate like millions of dollars or something that is very critical in our organization, and I'm going to appropriate that and we're going to do this. And if it fails, the whole company will come down with us. Don't do that. Like there's no need. Please don't do it. Pick a service, start with that service, hire a couple of SREs, try some stuff. Like train a couple of SREs, try some stuff. Like evolve that gradually. So every time you see someone saying like, yep, I've got a massive plan and a ton of budget, just do it small instead.
Remember, gradual change is a principle not only for the services themselves, but actually for the team too, for SRE within an organization.
Who knew it was people all along? but it is though. So yeah, frequently people are like, I'm going to buy some SRE systems and I'll install them. I'll get the Datadogs or all the cool stuff. Those are important, but if you don't have the people to run them, it won't work. And if you think you can hire a lot of them all at once, this will be harder than you think. So growing is easier. This is a real world conversation that I've had to have with someone. Well, first off, SREs need to code. So we need to just fire everyone who can't code. It's hard to explain how that comes across to people. Just from a moral sense, that's wrong. Like, that's not the right way. Like, but irrespective of the morality of that, what do you think the remaining people are imagining? That like, that's not a great space to be. Don't do that. Don't do these things. You can just train people how to code. There's courses and everything.
So to be clear, we're not saying that you shouldn't. We're not saying that you should have a goal of SREs who can't code. You still are going to need your SREs to be able to code. However, again, gradual change, right? This is sort of the theme of the talk. You don't want to cut out everyone who can't code, bring in a new shipment of people who can code and say like, go to work. It's much, much better to take the teams you already have who know your business and train them up. That said, if you have folks in your team who aren't interested in that at all, they say, I'm not a coder, I never will be a coder, I have no interest in being a coder, maybe this isn't the job for them, that's fine. You can probably find somewhere else for them to work, but SRE eventually is going to be a place for coding operations, right? You're going to be doing operations, you're going to be running services, you're going to be doing that by writing code, by evaluating code, by making changes to code. So if you're not a coder and you never want to be, maybe not the job for you. So we can keep both of these ideas in our head at the same time, right? We can train up the people that we already have. It's a much better way of doing it. You can, as a organization, you can put in place like a training program. You can bring in people to do it. You can have a 24-month roadmap certification process, whatever you want. Please don't fire everyone who can't code. People do this. Please don't be those people.
Your new SRE organization, and the new people are drenched in the blood of the existing team. This will be bad. It's weird that we keep having to say it, but like if it's a bloodbath and then you're like, but the new team here and we're going to have
it should be fine.
Tables
it should be fine.
Free food. Yeah. No, like they're covered in blood. It will be really bad.
Again, this is not Google talking. This is
we've seen some things.
Two individuals.
This is not a Google piece.
Right. No. Our personal opinion.
Personal opinions.
Embracing risk is an SRE principle. This seems obvious, perhaps.
Too obvious.
Almost too obvious. But this also applies to risk within the company in terms of what it is you're going to work on. So it's important that SREs feel that it's safe to fail at whatever it is that they're doing. I mean, hopefully they don't fail at keeping everything up most of the time, right? Like if they continue to, take down the site, that's not great. We're talking more about like project work, right? Like I want to, I have an idea on how to scale up the system. Let's try this for 6 months and see how it goes. Sure, this is a risk, right? Let's try it out. Maybe it won't work. That's fine, keep moving, right? A bad model is a team that only takes risks that will succeed, right? So only bring me answers, people tell me, right? Not great. You can set an objective and you can ask a team, let's all head in this direction. If you instead say, tell me how we're going to get there, but don't give me any bad ideas, maybe you're on the wrong side of the cultural chart that we showed earlier, right?
These are real world conversations. So I've had to have these conversations in previous roles, not at Google. I've had to have conversations with people and they're like, this is our innovation factory. And I'm like, okay, that's a weird term, but okay. I'm like, cool, how many failures have you had this year? And they're like, why would we have failures? I'm like, so we've run like 10 pilots and they've all been successful. I'm like, well, you're probably not taking as many risks as you think.
No, but we're innovating.
But we're innovating. Unless you're failing, you're not learning.
Right.
And so if your team can't come back to you or the organization and say, we tried some things and some of them failed, you're not taking risks. So have a think about it. Until you can document and celebrate a failure and say, wow, I took down production, but this is what we learned doing it, you're not embracing risk. If you don't embrace risk, it will embrace you. If you think that by not running these tests, we can't really afford to test that, it's too dangerous in production. Production will fall over. Like, I'm so sorry. Like it's not waiting to see if you're not testing stuff, the system is being tested in production. You have shifted right. Like, you didn't realize you shifted right, but you did. So if you don't like chaos engineering, that's cool, but like it's happening on your live system. If you don't like security, it's cool, but people are hacking into your live system. Like, these things are happening, risks are occurring, and each time you think like, well, no, like I want to be safe, it's less safe. Like it's counterintuitive.
Yeah, if you had a firefighter who said, I'm only going to be safe, I'm never going to approach the fire, that wouldn't be.
Don't go into the burning buildings.
That wouldn't be terribly effective.
You're going to have to go into the burning buildings.
Yep. When you're developing a practice, it's important to be aware of this thing we call the J-curve. Don't worry too much about the words you can't read on here because it's like gray on white. Focus more on the shape, right? So over time, as you adopt a new practice or new tool, often the way that it works is it feels really good right away, right? Hey, we can do the thing now, this is awesome. And then we have the trough of despair, right? We're thinking, oh, now we have to integrate with all the other tools and we have to like update the documentation and it doesn't work with the other stuff over there. This is a hassle. Don't give up, right? This is the J-curve. This happens all the time. The point of the trough of despair is, or the point to remember when you're in the trough of despair is that you're gonna go out of it pretty soon. And the top right corner is much higher than where you started, right? It's gonna all work out, don't worry, right? What we've seen often is when people adopt some new practice, like say SRE, they'll get a couple quick wins, and then it'll get tricky, right? They'll enter the trough of despair, and they'll give up. And they'll say, well, we thought we were going to get all this reliability out of it, but it turns out it's like a bunch of real engineering, and like that sounds like a hassle, so we're going to cancel the program. Please don't do that. Like, be aware of the J. Like, when you feel like you're in some sort of trough, this is what's happening to you. So ride it out. It's not going to be free to get up to the top right. It's going to take work, but you'll be in a better place.
And this is a DevOps piece, really, as well.
Yeah, this comes from Dora 2018.
So if you do whatever you're doing, the Kubernetes, like you go through this phase.
Yeah.
Like there'll be this period where like it got worse. I made a pipeline and now everything got worse faster. But that was it. Like but if you go back, it won't get better. Like you have to go forward in that space. But every time that happens, it means you're actually making progress. The flip is true. If everything's going well all the time, you're not moving forward. Like, or you're just incredibly lucky, but it's highly unlikely. Like you're probably just not moving forward. You're probably just not trying the stuff you should be trying.
All right, what do we actually do? How do we actually do this?
We should do some stuff. Anti-patterns, patterns, anti-patterns.
They're both good. Does anyone get asked to fix people's laptops and production in the same day?
You're an SRE. You know how to fix laptops. No one ever got, like, especially your family. You look after like something, a website. Seems important. My laptop's broken.
Having this as an official stance within your company, though, anti-pattern for sure. The SREs should not be fixing corporate machines. Also, the SREs shouldn't be like taking extremely vague, hey, just fix the internet, please, right? Like
prod's down.
Prod is down, walk away, right? Like that's no good, right? we want to make sure that the SREs have like a directed set of work to work on, and not just general purpose, keep all the things running at all times. Like that is an anti-pattern by itself. We talked also about planning, right? Making sure that you're not trying to come up with like a 10-year roadmap is important. The SRE teams will find work to do, and they will find it in the wild. Some of it can be proactive, some of it can be reactive. It's important to have a balance of these two. When you have outages, you're going to find stuff to work on, right? Like that's kind of how this works. In fact, if you're going to get started, that's often the best way to get started, is to build up this loop, this cycle of when there's an incident, unless you never have incidents, follow the incident response practices as listed in the SRE documentation, write a postmortem, get some work to do out of that postmortem, some bugs, some problems, solve those problems, rinse, repeat, right? This is gonna drive a lot of what your SRE team does, is fixing those problems, building tools. This is where it all starts. One part that it's actually been talked about quite a lot in the public, I think, but I'd like to repeat it because I think it's super important. When you're doing observability, monitoring, alerting, the thing that tells you, hey, there's a problem, make sure that it's symptom-based and not cause-based. The idea of a cause-based alert is I have imagined every possible cause for my system to break, and I've enumerated them, and I've codified them into our operations system, into our alerting system. That is impossible. That will never be complete, and it will always get out of date, right? If instead you talk about symptoms, symptoms can be caused by many things, right? The way to think about this is when you go into a doctor, you don't say, hi, doctor, could you please diagnose me? I'm pretty sure I have, the mumps, right? No, you don't start with the cause, right? You don't list all the possible conditions and ask for what should you do? Just give me the mumps medicine. They look at your symptoms, right? They check your pulse, they check your whatever it is that doctors do, and they whittle down all the possible symptoms until they find a set of causes that might be relevant. Do the same thing with your systems. Be a doctor to your systems, right? Make sure that the thing that's alerting you is symptom-based. I'm not saying throw away all of the monitoring of all those causes, but just don't use those as your first step into there might be a bad thing happening right now.
On the planning side, there's two layers of planning here as well. Like there's a long-term planning goal. Like you can have long-term plans. Like what are we doing next year is a valid plan, but it should be vaguer as it goes longer. If your plan's over 2 years, it's probably not a plan. That's more like a wish, like at that point. So keep it within that sort of boundary. But at the same time, if you're expecting results in like 6 months, J-curve, not so good, right? So keep that high level plan going, and your SREs will struggle to contribute because they're busy with incidents. So you'll need to keep a planning stream going and that vision of like, where are we doing? How are we operating? What's our team structure like? And then on the bottom, don't fit your SREs into your other loops. So incidents do not work in sprints. I wish they did, but they do not. So people are like, well, the sprint goal for this week is this, and we had an incident, so I'm not sure what to do. Don't mash them together. Like it's not healthy, and if you need to if someone needs to be carved out for doing work in the space, carve it out on the go and like extend your sprint. I know it's controversial, sprints can be different lengths, it's okay. Someone's probably gonna fight me for that one. Fair enough. Incidents do not work in sprints, so you will not be able to plan for incidents, but you can use these tools to make them better and use those as learning opportunities.
So who here is on a platform team or has a platform team at your company? Yeah. This is great. I think
so hot right now.
So hot right now. Yeah. You are cutting edge. Well done. This is the advice that we give to teams today, which is that you should consider what you're building as an organization as a platform with things built on top of it. And that platform itself is composed of capabilities. So these are capabilities that you can do to your system. It's things that the system can kind of do on its own, right? And you can just sort of describe them in procedural terms, right? You can buy these capabilities from vendors. You can build them your own, like you can just write code. And you can, think about it in terms of human capabilities as well, right? It could be a cultural thing, like the idea of having an on-call rotation, right? That is a capability of your platform of humans, right? The ability to have one person be able to go to bed and not have to worry about getting paged in the middle of the night is a form of capability. So as you add all these capabilities to a common platform, the platform will get better and better and better, and all the services that are using that platform will inherit those capabilities. So this is like an abstract model that you have to kind of apply to your technology and sort of organizational stack, but it makes sense, and it's a good way to consider how you're building versus buying and how you're tying them all together. Think of that platform. Also, one other way to think about this is as you add these capabilities to a platform, it gets stronger and stronger, and then you're going to add your services or your applications to that platform on a different time scale, right? So you can wait for your platform to get stronger before you add the important service, right? You can hold off on moving a service onto the new platform until you're confident in the new platform, right?
Is the chart the next one?
There is,
Do the
yes.
chart.
Look at this crazy chart. So an anti-pattern would be, we have a new platform, we don't really know how it works yet, quick, move the important thing onto it because it's the future, right? Has anyone seen this happen? I know I sure have, right?
Let's pick the hardest possible thing we have in our company.
Yeah, what makes the most money? Ship it. No. The bottom right corner is actually probably the most important part of this graph, even though it's in light gray. Make sure that you gain confidence in the capabilities of your platform before you put the important thing onto it, right? So there's two axes here for a reason. One is adding capabilities over time. You have a bunch of software engineers, you have a bunch of vendors that are supplying you things, you're adding capabilities onto your platform over time. At the same time, you're putting your services onto that platform. These are independent axes, right? We're not doing them in lockstep. We're waiting for the platform to be ready for what we need. Even better is if you can have a sort of a queue, right? So if a service wants to onboard onto your platform, but they need continuous deployment and you don't have it yet, you just say, okay, no problem. It's going to go on our backlog. As soon as it's ready, we'll tell you, right? And then once you have continuous deployment working well, you can say, hey, team, we have it. You want to take the platform? Great. So make your platform full of carrots, right? Not sticks. So you want to invite people to use your platform by showing the capabilities that you have. So treat this as a product within your company and listen to your customers who are the product owning teams. A little confusing, sorry.
It's a confusing diagram, but please take this away. If you think that you're going to pick the toughest service you have, and that will help because you're going to fix all the problems at once, you won't. It will just end up really bad. Fix the problems one at a time, use services which are medium critical, rather than just picking the thing the hill to die on. It's very dangerous. Yeah. So
take it away, Jade.
This is one of my favorites. So we often have this conversation because we used to say all the time, reliability is the most important thing. And everyone would be like, yes. And then we talk more and they'd be like, but not me though, not in my area. We're like, right. So what is the most important thing? And it would be something else, whatever, money normally. For a lot of companies, money is the most important thing. So we use the reliability to get money the same way that, say, security people do as well. So often we have this conversation, we're like, well, reliability is everyone's responsibility. So we kind of all do it and we all chip in. And I'm like, cool, security, that's everyone's responsibility. You have a CISO though, right? Who has a CISO, in their companies? It's a lot of CISOs. Some people are like, what's a CISO? Chief Information Security Officer. So there's some person who's looking after security for your organization. They might not have all the peoples and the monies, but they look after security. But often people don't have a chief reliability officer. And sometimes they're like, well, it's not important. And other times they're like, it's really so important we don't need one. You probably do though. And we spent a lot of time hoping that this wasn't the case and hoping that grassroots was everything. But actually all the grassroots that we've seen hits a sort of grass ceiling if there isn't executive support. So you'll need someone with executive support for reliability to make things like SRE successful. I wish it wasn't like this.
Yeah,
It
and
makes us sad.
unfortunately, we have seen kind of the bad case quite a bit, which is a sponsor's in place, SRE is happening, and then the sponsor leaves or finds something that is shinier, and SRE fails. This does happen. So sponsorship matters. Sponsorship abandonment has an impact. So it is important to make sure that this sponsorship is in place and that it's going to be sustained for a significant amount of time. And often this means getting investment from very high up in your organization. It doesn't have to be the title CRO. We made that up.
It's completely made up.
But if you end up making a CRO, let us know, because that'd be cool.
But if you don't have one, you're going to have a hard time. So whatever you need to do, put on a suit and tie, go speak to your exec team, whatever it is, but go find that reliability sponsor, or everything will be really, really hard.
We do not have a dashboard for you, which is the perfect metrics for are you being reliable or more reliable.
We tried a lot of dashboards.
Yeah. There are some good metrics in the DevOps space. Like we know the 4 keys from Dora. Those work really well. You can measure those. You can see them improve over time. We can see if teams are improving. We don't really have that for SRE. It's kind of a hassle. I wish we did. Instead, we have some proxy metrics that you can use in place. These hint at reliability. Reliability is one of those things where you it's hard to define, but you know it when you see it. And hopefully these help you see it. We just saw a talk about heroism a minute ago. Heroism is the shack effect, right? Are you still praising your shack? I hope not, right? Like try to get away from that.
Just
build
the right
a team.
level.
Just a bit, yeah. Like you should encourage everyone, but you shouldn't be depending on Shaq, right? Shaq will get traded. He will go, become an entrepreneur and no longer play basketball, right? Correlating funding with outages is another big thing we see. Yeah. Like you're only funding the SRE team right after the big event. That's not a great
roller
plan.
Coaster.
Yeah, it's a bit of a roller coaster.
Everything's reliable for a bit, then we cut the SRE team, then everything falls over, we hire an SRE team, then no, don't do that.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, we're almost done, I promise.
Nearly done. I think we're probably well over time, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
We'll try and wrap up super quick.
So this is a curve you may have seen somewhere on the internet. Maybe you feel like you're in the early adopters phase. SRE still is pretty new.
If you're here, you're in the early adopter space.
Yeah, if you're in this room, you're probably an early adopter. This is how conferences work, yeah. So the sad thing is, this is actually how it looks. So the chasm is actually pretty big.
Sharks everywhere.
Yeah, so this is not meant to be too dark, but really more of just a heads up. It's not going to be an easy adoption. It is difficult. This whole talk has been about the headwinds of SRE. There are many of them, but we think it's worth doing.
Everything is about culture, and culture is not free food and foosball tables and things. I wish it was. I wish we, we'll just put the ping pong tables in and it will be done. It's not those things. I'm so sorry. Like I wish it was. You can't measure culture. You know it. You see it. Like it's all around you, but like it's hard to measure. It's hard to get a dashboard. Every time you have a dashboard that measures culture, you do not have a dashboard that measures culture. I'm so sorry. So you gotta kind of target some of these things. And the one thing I think we would say as well is like pick your battles. Like just don't go in, guns blazing across all these areas. And I think this is good advice for DevOps as well. Like target your areas, get good at those areas. Like, it's more guerrilla warfare on the ground. Like incidents are there. The traps are all around you. Like just go in on those smaller battles. Like it's okay. But we do have advice. Like we did some research. Like this is the Google official research. If you don't have psychological safety, nothing works. None of this other stuff works. So it's not the ping pong. I'm so sorry. But it is the psychological safety. And we do have some ways of measuring these things. And if you do those 5 things, you'll have a much better time with SRE. Like we know that. So this is good.
Yeah, the way to think about it is if you do the things on the right, you'll end up with ping pong tables, not the other way around.
It's awkward correlation and causation.
Something like that. Okay, Sublinear scaling is a whole other topic. We could talk about it offline. Again, make sure that you're evolving your teams over time. You're not doing any knife switches. Gradual change is your friend. You can read all the points here.
Do these things.
Do these things.
Do these things.
Yeah.
If you don't want to do these things, you don't have to. But like, if you want the instant tips, here's instant tips. So there's more to read. But do these things.
Okay.
Last thing, I promise.
This is sort of a tease. So we talked about building a platform made of capabilities, but what are those capabilities? What are the things that an SRE team wants to? Yeah, people keep asking them. Turns out it's very complicated. So we build a map. A map is a way for you to establish where you are today, where you want to go, and how to get there. So it's a path through the mountains or whatever you want to think about. This is just a preview. This is not a Google product. This is, again, just the output of 2 individuals. This is a strangely 3D isomorphic or isometric.
JavaScript.
It's JavaScript. It's available at r9y.dev, which is short for reliability, because I can't spell the word reliability despite working in SRE for 15 years.
Super embarrassing.
This is all like out in open source. Please help. We have a Discord. We take PRs.
There's a better view.
There's a better view in a second. This one.
The reliability thing.
Yeah. There's a lot of these little dots. Each of these dots is a capability. None of these are a product. Some of them might be delivered by a product. In fact, often you'll find one product will buy you like 6 or 7 of like these capabilities all like in a cluster or something like that. And we'll find also like there will be a capability that you can buy from many vendors, or some that you can't buy from anyone because they're a cultural change or things like that. So if you're a vendor, please check it out and insert yourself into this map as many places as you think make sense. If you're not a vendor, please go and make sure that the vendors are actually telling the truth and find the spots where there's gaps, right? This map is in no way complete. Think about it in terms of 2 things. One is like the introduction or the editing of the map itself. We need more dots. They need to go in different places. The other thing is once you click on one of the dots, there's a bunch of text. It's just a wiki, right? So please make suggestions in terms of what to put in those text boxes or where to move the little boxes around. So these are sort of 2 models of things you can do to help us with this map. This is agnostic to cloud, agnostic to vendors. It's just general purpose.
I think we're nearly there.
I think we're done. Conclusion.
That's it?
Yep. Sorry, we went over.
Hope that helps.
That's the book. We have copies outside. Do we have time for questions or we should stop?
No, unfortunately. Thank you so
Sorry
much.
about that.
All right. Thank you.